Welcome to the Healthy Home Show. I'm your host, Fernanda Furman, Healthy Home Architect.
Hi, I'm Eric Furman, Healthy Home Contractor.
And today we're here with Bill Cadwallader. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Great. Thank you for having me to get this most important message about EMFs out there. People need to know about this. And most importantly, we'll be talking about solutions today as well.
Yes, solutions. It's great. Stay positive. So for those of you guys that haven't met Bill, who is also in our workshop, Bill is he's got an MBA. He's an electromagnetic radiation specialist, one of only 34 in the United States, working with the building biology group. So he's certified to help you with your electromagnetic problems. And he's got a book, and it's called
Exposed.
Yes, thank you. They got mixed up in here.
Exposed: The Electronic Sickening of America and How to Protect Herself, and includes dangers of 5G and smart devices, including over 30 pages of quick and easy solutions. So Bill, it's his book. It's amazing. That's something we suggest you guys to look into. And Bill, so can you tell us a little bit of your background and how you got into the 5G? Because that story, I think, it's very relevant and important.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I've been in IT all my life. And what happened, the last job I was at, I had a coworker, and the coworker, every time I saw him, he actually had his cell phone up to his head. Every time, before meetings, after meetings, he always had it up there. And he developed a huge tumor right where he had that cell phone on that side of the head. He didn't develop it on the back side, the other side, or the top. It was right there. So he had surgery and he had a lot of chemo, and we had a sigh of relief. And we said, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it grew back shortly. Surgery again, massive chemo, and then he died. And at that point, he left his wife, who was now a widow. He left 7 children who are now fatherless. And at that point in time, I knew the telecommunications industry, the electronic industry as well, were never going to tell us how to use these electronic devices, these wireless electronic devices, in a safe way. And so that's what started. Became certified. It's a 2-year course that you go through. There's over 15 courses that you have. And as Eric said, there's only about 30 or 34 of us practicing in the US. And we're here to help you, most importantly, to show solutions to people. And that's what I've been doing since shortly after that incident happened.
Yeah, it's unfortunately because a lot of those cancers, they go unnoticed. I mean, not unnoticed, but they're not correlated to using the cell phones or 5Gs. And one of the things that I heard lately is how certain phones has a, more exposure to radiation. And they're talking about the iPhone 8, which is the one I have. So what do you see in the industry right now in terms of precaution from the companies that are making cell phones and letting us know that there is a danger or there's none?
Well, most of them will say there's not a danger at all, that it's well below the federal standards. But the federal standards were established in 1996, 97. It was the Telecommunications Act. And it was actually written by the cell phone companies and the electric companies. And the Congress just did a rubber stamp. And what they did is, instead of doing biological action, in other words, radiation causing interference to our biology, what they said is it's got to heat your tissue up. So basically, it's got to heat like putting your head in your microwave or an oven, it's got to heat the tissue up before there's a problem. But the biological problems start way below that. But they base that standard on just a heating issue, and that's actually at 10 million. And the only way you would ever get 10 million is if you literally put your pillow on a cell tower and slept there, because it's just so high. And they did that on purpose. And every year since 1996, that's about 14 years later, 13, 14 years, 24 years later, there's been groups that have been trying to get that down to a reasonable level. And there's countries around the world who have actually dropped it by 1,000, maybe even 10,000 lower than our particular ratings, because they know there's a problem. And the Bioinitiative report that came out in the latest one is 2019. It was updated 2019. There's over 5,000 studies that talk about all the health effects, cancer and other health effects, from just using a cell phone in our normal way of life. And it's solid evidence. It was done by MDs, PhDs, who are MDs and PhDs in this particular area. And how can you refute that? But since the FCC is the sole controller of how big the standard should be, then, and because of the lobbying dollars, I talk about that in my book, then it's never changed in over 23 or 24 years. And every year they try to get it lower. And most people don't know, but if you go on like page 24 or 25 of your user manuals for both the Android and the Apple, it actually says, never touch this phone to your body.
Wow.
Well, how can that be? How do I hold it? How do I put it next to my ear? How about in my pocket? It's there. But they say it has to be so many centimeters away, so many, from your body. And they literally have that, but no one knows about it. No one is warned. And the biological effects are ridiculous.
Yeah, and like, where do we stop with this toxin exposure, right? And so electromagnetic is a big part of it. So I'm trying to put myself in the listener's shoes. There's so much information around this topic, and everyone's right now freaking out about so many different things. And you just said something that I'd just like to touch on, is that there's over 5,000 studies already around the effects. And then you get somebody like yourself that's a professional, educated in many other areas of life, and then you take another course, which is very intensive, been around for a long time, and you actually have instruments that you use to go and test the levels, which I guess what I'm trying to express right now is, as you look for this information, there are professionals like Bill to turn to, and I encourage you to turn to professionals like Bill that can give you realistic results with realistic equipment. So you're not just going out there and buying some device haphazardly thinking it's going to protect you when you don't even know what you're really protecting yourself against. And that's what I'd like to kind of bring up again. Stephanie did it, and you did it in the interviews. What are the 4 areas? How do we, as you mentioned several times, and there's small solutions up to big solutions. We could start walking through, like, what are the 4 areas? How do you test for it, and simple ways to kind of protect ourselves?
Sure, that's a very good question. So there's radiations from the wire, what I like to call is the power of 3. There's electric radiation, magnetic radiation, and then there's what's called dirty electricity. And that can be power lines outside your house, that can be wires in your wall, or anything that you actually plug in. All of those 3 situations can cause one or more of those type of radiation. So radiation from the wires. And then the other one, the 4th one you were alluding to, was radiation through the air. And it includes Wi-Fi, wireless, Bluetooth, commonly called RF. And each of those particular radiations that we have need a different instrument to actually measure it. And our standards are based on the German standards that started in the 70s. And they've been updating them on a regular basis. The last update was 2015. And so we have a no concern, a slight concern, severe concern, and extreme concern for all of those particular radiations. There are 3 radiations from the wires, and then the 3 through the air, commonly called RF, Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. And we use meters to actually measure those. And the good news is, most of the time, we can actually drop the radiation considerably. And that's what we did in the book as well. We have a chapter on how you reduce the radiation from the wires, a chapter on how do you reduce the radiation from Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth, commonly called RF, through the air. And then also chapter 9 talks about what are 24 things you can do in your bedroom right now. And those are the things we want to get to. But it's a very good question. You've got to make sure you have the right standards and you're using the right instruments for the right radiation, because a lot of times people will just have 1 meter and they'll only get one of those radiations. But you have to look at all 4 of them, 3 from the wires and the RF through the air, or Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. A lot of times they lump that into one radiation called RF.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think you said something very important too. You mentioned the bedroom. And throughout the whole show, what we're trying to tell everybody is this is not to make you feel like you're overwhelmed and there's nothing that I can do, or if I have to do everything, it's going to cost too much, so I'm not going to do nothing. So I think one of the most important things, and we talked about this in a different, on the workshop, it's about choosing that room, like the bedroom. That's where you should be relaxing, recharging, and even for other items and throughout the house, if somebody can start creating their sanctuary, that should be their bedroom. What do you see as far as solutions or things that actually can make it worse in the bedroom? What are the things that you have seen in other people's houses, on your cases that you have helped people?
Yeah, what I've in the book in chapter 9, we have 24 things, and my wife was talking to one of her acquaintances one time, a friend, and said, here's some things you can do, but she said only do 1 per day. So if you can only do 1 per day, then that's an easy solution. So what we find in bedrooms, the very first thing, and we talk about it in the 10 ways you can reduce radiation as well, in that little brochure, is don't charge your cell phone on your nightstand. Move that as far away as possible. 19 out of 20 people I talk to, they charge your cell phone on your nightstand. It's just the most common thing. And I don't know if we have time for a little story, but we had this 16-year-old. So I was coming out of a house, and a lady was there with me. It was a couple. And what happened was, she said, the girl across the street just had surgery. I said, surgery? What for? And she said she was 16. She had to remove a tumor on the side of her face. And it took 9 hours. Fortunately, it was benign, but it took 9 hours. And I said, I wonder what she was doing. She said she sleeps with her cell phone every night next to her pillow. And what most people don't know is the cell phone, and this is off now, so if people are wondering if it's safe or not, it is off. What happens is every 6 to 30 seconds, the wireless devices, including the cell phone, tries to reach the nearest cell tower, the nearest Bluetooth device, the nearest Wi-Fi. And what happens, it does it all night long. And it's thousands of times the safe level. So the other thing is, if you're charging it on your nightstand, we have 3 radiations from the wire: electric radiation, magnetic, and dirty electricity. Then that cord that's actually plugged in creates 1 or more, normally all 3 of those radiations as well. So besides getting Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth, you're actually also getting the 3 radiations. So very top priority. If you don't do anything else and you turn, I would move that cell phone as far away as possible. And if you don't, what I do is I charge it in the bathroom, good distance away. And if you don't need an emergency call on that, then what we talk about is airplane mode on and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi off. If you do need to receive an emergency call at night, then make sure your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are off. And we go into detail. It's a very easy little thing that people can do on your Apple phone as well as your Android phone. So that would be the top priority I would see, and that's the biggest mistake I find. And what will happen sometimes is the spouse will say, I'm not charging here, there, next to me, but the other spouse still charges it on the cell phone. I mean on the nightstand. And if you go out to my YouTube channel or my Facebook, it's called Cancer on Your Nightstand. So I put a phone, I put the meter right on the pillow, and then I show the amount that it is right there. It's just a 1-minute video, very easy to see. I can send you a link as well to that.
We can post the link down
yeah,
below the video.
Yeah, and I can put it on that, and if you want to put it on your Facebook page as well. And it's a great little thing, a great video to show you what's really happening. So please do that.
So 2 things, just before we get off the nightstand thing, you bring up a really good point, is that even on airplane mode, okay, I'm safe. The phone being next to you while it's charging is also emitting the other electrical issues, not just the wireless, right?
Right, it's exactly perfect point, Eric. It's doing the 3 radiations from the wires, doing electric radiation, magnetic radiation, and dirty electricity.
Yeah.
And they're all bad for you.
Yeah, so that's a huge one. As she mentioned, and you've helped us with as well, and everybody keeps saying the same thing: if you can do one room, do the bedroom. But one of our listeners brought something up, and before we forget, there's so many things to go over in this topic. You also have a video where you show, I mean, this is something everyone's known for a while, but can we talk about the microwave that people still don't fully understand? You have a great video on that. Maybe you'll allow us to post that as well.
Oh, please, I'll send that. And it's called Step Away from the Microwave. And so we show the meter with the microwave off, and then we turn the meter microwave on, and then we show what the meter is. It's over 95,000, and where you want to be is somewhere around 100 or less than 100, so sleeping even less, but it's at 95,000. And so we're walking through the kitchen, walking through a hallway, another room, the living room, and then we get into a hallway about 40 feet away, and it's still not safe. So we're not saying never use a microwave. We have a microwave. We use it very sparingly, but when you turn it on, just get as far away as possible. And the one thing I'm starting to see now is the pets. So where are your pets? How close are they to the microwave? So when they sit next to, do you have a bed for them right in front of your smart TV where the router is, where everything is? The cancer rate on pets have jumped so high. And we're going to come out with an actual, we're going to come out with another brochure with what you can do about the pets to check on that. So we're almost done with that. And please move the pets, away from smart TVs, routers, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of our speakers that was here, Dawn, we tried to bring that up too. She has a tremendous heart for pets and has had all kinds of movements around that. And it's such an important part of most of people's lives, for people that have, had animals with them. And as you know, it becomes part of your family, so to speak. And we don't really, now this is coming up, people are asking, why are pets getting cancers and tumors like never before? I mean, stuff you'd never hear of a dog getting. I mean, it's just so bizarre, but they're
more sensitive, right?
Yeah.
They're sensitive to smells. They're sensitive to those invisible waves.
Right, and in the book, just wanted to let you know, in the book, in Appendix 1, we have actually a list by room, like the bedroom, what is radiation from the wire, what is radiation from Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. So you can see, I have that item, that's probably a problem. But we have a whole section on pets.
Nice.
And the collars that they're wearing now, if they're Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, they're constantly transmitting right there, and it's thousands of times the safe level.
Wow.
And again, just small things we can do. And what I did is every year I go out to the CES convention in Las Vegas. So we did make it before the virus, the corona. I know we're going to air this about the time that the corona has come out. But what I do is I take all the Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth or any other type of radiation, and I update the book. So we just have a 2020 update that actually just got out there. So we have the most up-to-date list on all these devices. Even if you don't have a meter, you can say, wow, that's not a good device. Either relocate it farther away, turn it off, or say, I don't really need that. And when I go out to a home or I talk to people on the phone, I do phone consulting as well. And what I do is I have a good, better, and best solution. So if someone can't do the best, hey, the the better or the good is always anything moving toward a good solution is great.
I was going to say, that's one of the things I really appreciate about you, Bill, and most of the speakers that we've had on here is we just have this common theme of practicality and different levels. You know, it's like as we bring this information out there, some people think, oh my gosh, I can't afford that. That's one of the things I've really appreciated about knowing you and working with you is that you've got solutions at every level. So there's always something you can do.
And again, one step at a time, as long as you have a plan and you understand, so you can be more responsible. And it's not about, I'm never going to use a cell phone again. It's how can I use it responsibly?
Right.
And there are options. So for example, if you could talk about the headphones, the Wi-Fi headphone, earplugs.
Yeah.
Wired Bluetooth headphones, any Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah. Apple has one about a year ago. They had sold 22 million of them, and that was like 2019, or 2018, 2019. I'm not sure what the number was, but millions, tens of millions have been sold. And when I was at the CES show, I was walking around collecting information. This lady had some earbuds, I think is what they're called, earbuds. And the Apple one, and I measured it, it was 172,000. And it was right next to her ear on both sides. And again, good, better, and best solution. What we would recommend is that you don't use that, but if you have to use them every so often, put them in your ear, use it, but then immediately when you're not on a call, take them out, try to turn them off. Some of them you actually can't turn off, but that's what we would recommend. And the wireless headphones that people have now, the Bluetooth devices. I was actually at my chiropractor's and he was talking about a lady that came in and she had melanoma on her cheek, right here. And she thinks it was caused by her Bluetooth device. So I said, if this was the Bluetooth device, was it on this side? He said, no, it was on the same side that the Bluetooth was. I said, was it above the Bluetooth device or below the Bluetooth device? It was right underneath the Bluetooth device. And again, every 6 to 30 seconds, even if you're not making a call, they go off trying to reach the nearest Bluetooth device, and it's thousands of times a safe level. And one other thing now is hearing aids. They're putting Bluetooth in most hearing aids. So now those people have those right there. Try to get that turned off or only turn it on when you need it and immediately turn it off. So hearing aids are a big issue now.
Yeah. Now, compared to having like an Apple Watch or another wireless device, can you explain to the listeners why something inside of your ear canal is so much more problematic than something around or by your body, just by the vicinity and what's happening with your head?
Yeah, in the book I talk about DDT, so dosage, distance, and time. So what's the dosage of the particular device? What's the distance? And what's the time it's there? And so when you have something in your ear versus on your arm or your wrist, it's a lot closer to you. It's basically right there, closer to your brain. Obviously, this is closer to your wrist, and it can be some problems as well. But since it's right next to your brain, it causes huge problems. There's been a rise in glioblastoma, and those are related to Bluetooth devices as well as cell phones. They've like doubled in the Netherlands, they've doubled in the US, they've like doubled in the UK. And so I often ask a person, the question is, what would happen tomorrow if the federal government of the US said, by the way, traffic fatalities doubled last year? Do you think someone would be doing something about it? We have the doubling of cancers, glioblastoma multiforms, and it's doubling, but no one does anything. And when I speak, I was with you earlier, and I went through a PowerPoint. I talk about 7 people within a year that got brain tumors. And I often ask people, when they were in their early 20s, how many of their friends or how many did they even know had a brain tumor, let alone 7 in 1 year? And the worst news about that is 2 have now died out of that list. So again, the distance is right next to your ear. And acoustic neuromas are another thing that are causing a huge problem. But getting back to the Apple Watch, it's doing the same thing every 6 to 30 seconds. It's basically going off, and it's thousands of times the safe level. And when you have an Apple Watch, look at where your hand is, and you have a wristwatch, look at what organ it's closest to. So even though it's not right next to your ear and your brain, it's still causing issues. It could cause issues with the liver or any of the organs. And I was at a conference once, and I was out, there was a nurse that came up to me and said, you know, the doctors are having huge problems, the ones that wear scrubs. I said, what type of problems are they have? They're having problems with their heart. And she was talking about male doctors. Obviously, there's lady doctors as well. But what happens is they have their phone right here. Every 6 to 30 seconds, it's going off. And the frequency interferes with the pacemaking, or can interfere with the pacemaking of the heart. I'm not saying every arrhythmia is caused by that, but again, are we contributing to the issue? And when I speak often in front of an audience, I'll go through 6 pages or 6 slides of issues, and then I'll have a slide with a camel, and I'll say, is this, I'm not saying that all the illness we've ever had in humanity has been caused by EMS, because they've only been around a certain amount of time, but could this be the thing that broke the camel's back? Could this be the straw that broke the camel's back? And then I finished up with the lady, and I said, well, the nurses have the same problem. She said, no, they're having problems with their organs lower on their body. Well, think where their pockets are. She showed me. They're right down close, just above their belt. And that's where nurses tend to have more problems, because they carry that cell phone. And what you can do is just turn airplane mode on, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi off, cuts off all the radiation. So that's the easiest thing. And when you want to check your messages, then turn it airplane mode off, and then immediately you can check your messages. So that's an easy tip to do.
Yeah, it's a nice tip. And really, it's just about, as we've gone through this whole process, is changing simple habits, changing habits in general. One of the things that I was thinking about listening to you, I'm just putting myself back before I knew about any of this, or somebody, you know, definitely not wanting to believe any of this, which is totally fine, but just trying to wrap your head around, okay, where's the proof? Like you made an analogy about the cars, for example. That's something that we can physically see happening. And it's really easy to make that correlation. I think the hardest part really right now is making these direct correlations, you know, since one, it's cumulative, and in most cases, you know, it's about time and distance, and everybody's different. So, but as you were saying before, the tests are out. There's like 5,000 plus now.
Measurable.
It's measurable. I guess we're just now starting to see this stuff. So, and then you've got people coming up with bogus, funky stuff that's, you know, pseudoscience. So that doesn't help make these correlations any easier for people. But that's what I love. This is just solid information. So thank you for allowing people to hear this.
And lobbying is a big part of this. So we think about the pharmaceuticals as the biggest lobby in this, but actually they do about 277 million a year. And lobbying is not advertising, it's just taking money from the lobbyist to your representative or senator or whatever it is. And what happens is the telecommunications is 410 million. So it's actually more than the pharmaceuticals. And the telecommunications are giving lobbying dollars to the FCC, to the regulators, the senators and congresspeople. And what happens is that's why the figure of 10 million microwatts per meter squared has never been changed, because of the lobbying. It's just so high. And you'll say, well, the FCC, it's called a captured agency. Harvard actually did a report on it, saying these federal agencies that are designed to protect our health are actually captured by the lobbyists. And you'll say, well, how can that be? They're all independent people. The current head of the FCC is a former attorney for Verizon Wireless. How impartial can that be? Because we also, in the book, we talk about revolving doors. People go up to the federal government, they stay on these committees, then they go back to the industry. So are they going to do anything to jeopardize their job? I don't think so. And then when you look at studies, someone will say, well, there's a study that says it's not a problem. Look at who it funded. Was it funded by the telecommunications agency or was it independently funded? And those 5,000 articles, those studies that I talked about, most of them were all independently funded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I challenge you as the listener to definitely reach out to Bill, reach out to people like us that have gone through a electromagnetic remediation. So from you as the professional going out, so for those of you guys who don't know, what Bill is doing is as his business, he will actually go out, he'll go to your home, go to your business, figure out what's going on, see what the risks are, and give you solutions. So based on like, could you walk us through a case study of somebody that was suffering? What were they suffering from? What you did for them, and then what happened afterwards, and what benefits did they notice after you had done a remediation for them?
Yeah, I was just at a couple's house. They moved from Tacoma, Washington about 17 months ago to Las Vegas. I actually work in Arizona, Nevada, Southern California, Orange, and San Diego counties, as well as Utah. And they moved from Tacoma, Washington, and all of a sudden, the lady who was vibrant, did a lot of stuff into crafts and everything, all of a sudden lost all her energy. Her hips started hurting. She actually started using a cane. She wasn't that old. And so when we go into a house, what the very first thing before I get there is I send a questionnaire so I get a good idea of what's happening. And then we go over those questions at the start to find out what type of issues, what type of wireless items they have in the house. So it's pretty thorough, and we spend some time going over that. And then what we do is we start measuring through the house. We measure the electric radiation, the magnetic radiation, and dirty electricity. Those are the radiations from the wire. And then we measure the Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. Just think of the power of three. There's three from the wires and three through the air, commonly called RF through the air. And so what we did is I found some numbers in the dirty electricity. So solar is a huge problem now. Solar can cause a lot of dirty electricity. So they didn't have solar, but it was next to them. And normally, if you have anything that saves energy, it normally creates more radiation. So, and the reason it is like light bulbs, LED light bulbs, they are going on and off maybe 20,000 times a second. So half the time they're off, half the time they're on, but your eyes don't pick that up. And so her the couple's dirty electricity was 1,700, 1,800, 1,900 units. And what we want someone is around 30 or 40. So do the math on that. So that's one of the radiations, dirty electricity, one of the only radiations that we actually have a filter for. We have several different filters when I go out to make sure what filter they actually feel the best with. So we got that down to normally in the 30s or 40s and, in that particular area. And so I got a text from her recently. She says, I feel a lot better. And I'm only using my cane every so often. My energies were coming back. And that was the main issue, was their dirty electricity was the one that was off the charts. And someone often asks me, well, which is the worst? Is it electric, magnetic, or dirty electricity? Or is it Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth, commonly called RF? They're all bad. There's case studies for all of those. One of the worst case studies I have ever saw was a middle school in Southern California. And what they had was they had 24 teachers and staff that got cancer at a single middle school. That's a big number. And then the kids who are at that middle school for 3 years or less, when they got in their 20s, so far 49 students have developed cancer in their 20s. So when we were in our early 20s, how many of our friends had cancer?
Never.
0, 1,
Zero.
almost. No, normally it's 0, 1. 49. And then also, so that was the major problems. And the worst number, there's a worse number, the number 12. 12 have now died. 6 teachers and staff have now died. 6 students in their 20s have now died. And there's another, and to look at the 3 top cancers in that particular school, it was 13 times the thyroid cancer. 13 times the thyroid cancer, how can that be? It was almost 10 times the melanoma and almost 9 times the uterine cancer. And those are just the 3 top cancers in that particular school. So I often ask people, if that happened at a middle school, what do you think's happening? And when there was an epidemiologist, she actually wrote a book called Dirty Electricity, Dr. Sam Milham, epidemiologist. He was a master of public health and an MD, and he actually went in after hours, a teacher let him in, and he measured the whole school. And again, those numbers were, I mentioned the house recently, there were like 1,800, 1,900 throughout the whole house, 1,700. He found numbers that were above 2,000. The meter could not go above 2,000. We have meters now that go up to 20,000, but at that time he only had a meter. And so what we suspect, and 11 of those rooms were above 2,000. And they did a correlation. The more time a teacher or a staff member or a student spent in the room, there was a greater chance that they would actually get cancer. And so he thought, you know what I'll do? I'll write a letter to the superintendent. I'll write a letter to the principal. I'll say, I don't know if you have a problem. I don't know if this is causing the problem, but I'll be happy to come in for free to fix this school. You know, no cost to you, I'll just do it. The next letter he got was from an LA law firm that said, if you ever step foot on this campus again, we'll arrest you under the Homeland Security Act.
Wow.
And you wonder why people are not, coming forward, because we have seen a lot of physicians that when they speak out, they lose their license or they get sued, or we have seen a lot of people just kind of oppressing. And even in a lot of groups, like, people feel very scared of speaking out their minds right now because of the consequences of going against, the big corporations.
Right. And think about it, if you have attorneys representing the school, who are they there to protect? Are they there to protect the students and teachers, or are they there to protect the school and administration?
Right.
That's their job.
And that brings me to another point, which is the children, right? Because now we live in a generation where I was trying to explain to my kids that when I was young, I didn't have a cell phone. Most we got was an Atari,
Oh, yeah.
And they cannot even understand, like, but how did you do that? How did your mom find you? So one of the things that we see a lot too now in schools are kids with all the computers and wireless iPads. Can you talk a little bit how kids are being exposed to radiation and what's doing to them?
Yeah, it's one of the worst things that is happening. The iPads, any tablet type of device, any cell phones. I'm reading that in the US, most kids at the age of 9 now have a cell phone. I mean, 9 years old. And they've actually, some schools in France now have banned, you cannot use your cell phone. You get to school, you put it in a locked area, you cannot look at it between classes, nothing, and you only get it when you go out. But they're causing huge problems, because think about a kid when they have an iPad. I'll use the book to represent one. A lot of times they're right here. It's right in their belly. And I went to a family get together, and there was a distant relative I've seen maybe once a year or something like that. And so he came up to me, and he knows what I did. And he said, I just have an abdominal tumor. I said, abdominal tumor? He said, yeah, I had it removed and it's okay. But I'm wondering if my iPad is causing the issue. And I said, I'm not sure. What are you doing? He said, every night I take my iPad, and for 2 hours, I lay it on my stomach in bed, laying down. And think about that. Every 6 to 30 seconds, that iPad is going off, trying to reach the nearest Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, thousands of times the radiation. Even if you've downloaded something and you have it turned Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, it's trying to connect all the time. So think about kids. They're doing it. They have their iPad right here. They're using it for hours upon hours. And when I grew up, parents used to say, go watch the TV to get out of our hair. Now they're saying use their iPad. And and uh, and one of the things that's happening now is, and it's phone related as well as iPad related, is colorectal cancer. A new stat just came out, 65 and above, it's actually going down. And but for kids, for people 20 to 49, it's actually going up. So it's doubling and tripling up. And we say, well, is it nutrition? Is it that? Guess where guys carry their cell phone? They carry it in their front pocket, and where the ladies normally carry it, in their back pocket on their jeans. And every 6 to 30 seconds, it goes off with thousands of times the radiation. And it's really bad. It's just, I mean, how can colorectal cancer 65 and above with a weaker immune system and everything else go down? And when you're 20 to 49, you have the strongest immune system. How can that be going up? And I would like to say that it is because of all the studies that they've done. Part of those 5,000 studies, they talk about these type of diseases that are happening when you have a cell phone or a tablet that close to you. It's thousands of times a safe level. And remember what the manufacturer said? Never touch this to your body. So I've got it here, I've got it in my pocket, I've got it in my back pocket. It's literally being right next to your skin.
What about cases? Because we have seen a lot of people saying, oh no, I'm fine. I have the protective cases. Are there any protective cases that that will actually do its job?
So when you measure a cell phone or a tablet, you got to measure the top, you got to measure the bottom, and you have to measure all four sides of it. So we do that with a meter. And what happens is if you can still receive a call on your cell phone, it's leaking out somewhere.
Sure.
It's literally leaking out. And so what happens is if you've put a case and you've restricted the phone, guess what the phone tries to do? Now it's not 4 bars, now it's 3 bars, 2 bars, or 1 bars. It powers up, so it's actually even more powerful than it was before. It's putting out more radiation trying to connect. So literally every case I've measured, it's leaking out somewhere. And someone will say, well, hold it, here, this is the back of my phone, I'm gonna have it next to me. So there's no problem. I said, well, what part of your body do you not care about? Do you not care about this part? Do you not care about this part? Do you not care about this part or the part below the phone? So again, it's shielding one small part of the body, but it's coming out all those other areas. Really huge problem. And the Apple Watches are really, the watches that you have, the Android, if someone has that, please put airplane mode on and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi off. One of the worst things, because even though they're on the wrist, we talked a little bit about this, but look, where am I having it? I'm having it right here. It's somewhere normally on your body when you're sitting or sleeping. Not quite as bad as something up here, but again, almost as bad. And it's bad enough. So so the cases, I've never measured a case that was that reduced the radiation completely. There are pouches that they actually sell where you put a phone in and you actually wrap it up, and it's a Velcro pouch. But at that point, you could literally just turn your phone off and get the same benefit, or airplane mode on and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi will give you the same benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you bring up such a great point. I mean, logically, now that we've done so much remediation and we're consciously thinking about that, a case, and you just confirmed exactly what I was thinking, and you brought up another point, is not only these devices, when they can't find the signal, it amplifies. So you're smashing, 50 to 80% of its ability to communicate. So what does it start doing? It starts communicating faster and a stronger signal to try and establish a connection, right?
Exactly. That's perfect. That's a great way to tell it. And so what we do is, what we show people, distance is your friend. So we show people how to use the cell phone safely. And the other thing is, when you have a case, someone thinks it's protective, so now I can leave it right next to my head, right, here's my dog, I'll leave it in the dog bed or whatever. It's just that sense of that you're safe, and it's really not. It's really bad.
Yeah. So the other thing too for us that was like a shocking thing, and we did a lot of those things.
Sure, we all did.
Yeah, I worked when I was pregnant. I had my laptop on top of my belly, and I have a picture. One of the pictures that I love is actually like have this laptop on top of my belly, but also we had the wireless baby monitor that I thought was amazing because my mom in Brazil could be watching my kid when I was, in the middle of the night because of the 6 hours difference. And it was just later on that we found out that how bad that is for the kid. Would you please talk a little bit about the baby monitor and also the, kids remote controls, right? For video games that they're playing, that's also wireless.
Yeah, good point. And I actually have a video on a baby monitor, so I can give you that link as well if you want to put it up on your site. And so what I do is I take that same little meter and I go back, and at 20 feet with this typical baby monitor, it's not safe. So what room is 20 feet by 20 feet that you could actually even use it? So we recommend in the 10 ways to reduce your radiation exposure now, not to use one, but if you're going to use one, you need to meter it. Now there's a website called techwellness.com, and they're actually in Newport Beach, and they sell a perfectly safe baby monitor. So if someone wants to pick up a baby monitor, that's a great place to go. And again, when people ask me about things to buy, I always give them a website. But if you can find it cheaper or any other place better, then I would do that. So yes, baby monitors are one of the worst things that they ever made, the wireless baby monitors. And I've never measured one that was actually to the levels of safety that we like to see. The other question was the wireless remotes that kids have. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's just communicating wirelessly with the game, and it's right here. A lot of times they have it here, right next to them. And so what we recommend on that is if they want to play with those wireless game devices, get it wired. So please get it wired. Get the one that is wired. Do that. And then whenever you wire something, you always have to make sure that Wi-Fi, wireless, or Bluetooth are actually turned off on the machine. Because a lot of times when you plug in a cable to any wireless device, it does not turn that off. It just has another avenue to connect. So make sure you do that as well on those. But those are bad. They've got it right in their hand. They're spending hours just playing games. It's just so close to them. And it puts out thousands of times the safe, the level of radiation above the no concern level.
Yeah, and then that goes because we have done that. Eric has hardwired the house. And,
oh, good.
Yeah, so like right now, everything, even we have adapters for our cell phones where we use the adapter to hardwire our phones, but it's not convenient to have all those cables around, the cables for the mouse, cables for the keyboard, cables everywhere. It's not convenient, but at the same time, how much is your your health worth it? Is it convenience, more important to you than your health? What is priority, right?
Right, good point. And how much is your health worth? What are you willing to do? And when I go into a house, I have a good, better, and best solution. And I sometimes, can you turn the Wi-Fi off? No, we can't turn the Wi-Fi off. We can only do it when we go to sleep. So then I work with that. I try to get the Wi-Fi device as far away as possible. A lot of times in the western states, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and Southern California, we can actually put that in the garage or get it as far away as possible. And then what we do is we have a little remote control that actually turns that off or turns it on when they need it, or there's a timer that you could put. So again, good, better, and best solution. Some people are willing to wire everything, and as they get into it, they might start with turning it off at night, so please do that. the next best is to actually only turn it on when you need it, turn it off when you don't need it. And then obviously the cabling is the best, the adapters, and you get those for phones, you can get those for tablets. So a lot of things you can get those for. And yeah, again, what is your health worth at this point? And a lot of times people will do the good solution, and then they'll eventually work into the better and then to the best. It sounds like you guys are already at the best solution. So I applaud you for doing that, because you're doing it for you, the two of you, but your kids, which are probably the most, even more important, because they have so many more years to live. And then they'll get in a habit where they say, this is the norm. You don't use wireless things. You wire it up. That's what we do. And before all this wireless started, we never had. Everything was hardwired. Everything had a wire. All the game controllers had a wire and everything. And they made all this stuff so convenient. And last year in October, I went out to the largest cell phone conference in the US, and it was actually in LA. And there were over 21,000 people there. And so I heard different speakers, and I'm gathering information so I know how all this works and things. And this one speaker got up, and he was so proud. He had 60 wireless devices in his home. 60 wireless devices. Can you imagine how much radiation that's put out? And I have a story. A colleague of mine in Pennsylvania, she went out to a house once, and she started to work sort of in the autism area. More and more autistic parents called her. So she went out to a house. The child had autism, but it wasn't the full blown. It was a little, not quite as much. But the gentleman had 10 TVs in the house. They were all wireless. 10 wireless, all the speakers were wireless and everything else, and the poor child. And so they went out to the car, and the Bluetooth, another thing that can have a problem is in your car, the newer cars have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. So she actually had Bluetooth in her car, and my colleague measured that. She said, this isn't good. She turned it off. The child started to act almost immediately more normal. We can't say that for every autism, whatever they are in the autism spectrum is, but again, we have all these things assaulting our immune system, and that's what 5G is doing so much now. So you want to, when we go into a house, we try to pull away as many things as we can, or reduce the time they're on, or get rid of them. I mean, I've been in houses, I'll find something very, very large. I'll say, oh, what's this for? Oh, that was the phone we used to use. We don't use it anymore. So we unplug it. And so we just go through the house. And I also have, if someone doesn't have, we always recommend a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist to go to the house. Again, we have good, better, and that's the best solution. But there are residential meters that people can measure their own house with that will give them in the ballpark to see what they have. But we would always recommend that somehow, some way you actually do meters. But start with a resource like my book, where here are things you can do without a meter, and it's very easy.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things I want to say right now. So you did say something about immune system, and depending on when you're watching this video, we're currently right in the middle of being quarantined basically at our own homes from the coronavirus. So immune system is something that we want to keep strong, resilient. And what specifically is, as you said, 5G, wireless, any of these things, what specifically is it doing to our health and our immune system?
Well, there's three major things that we know about now. It damages the DNA. So when you damage DNA, a lot of time, or cancer can result if your body doesn't fix it. It also compromises the blood-brain barrier. So the blood-brain barrier is the blood actually goes through your brain. If it has toxins in that blood, it's a barrier that was designed so those actually don't get into your brain. And then the final thing, it damages the immune system. This is what so much of this is doing. It's doing it many, many ways. So those are the three things. And what you want to try to do is reduce as many of these So the blood-brain barrier is strong. You basically have a stronger immune system, and you have as minimal DNA damage as possible. And there was a study once that actually, when they had a cell phone with mice, actually just after about 2 minutes, a little more, the blood-brain barrier started to be compromised just after about 2 minutes of time. It started on that road. So again, one of the things we recommend in the brochure is always, whenever possible, use your cell phone on speaker mode. So get it as far away as possible. Distance is your friend on all of this. We know you can't do it 100% of the time, but if you do it 95% of the time, then that's a 95% solution, and that's a good thing. Same thing with the watch. A lot of people will have their Apple Watch, and they'll work out with it. And so people will come up to me and say, I gotta have it when I work out. Okay, if you have it, do it for 1 hour, and then the other 23 hours of your life, don't have it on your wrist. You've reduced it by over 95% if you do the math. So again, we're always looking for something that people can do right now and reduce it as much as possible. And that's why I always have a good, better, and best solution, whatever they can get to. Some people, I'll go in, they throw, they always have their watch on airplane mode on, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi off. Other people, will just do it when they work out. But most of them will then take it off. And don't have it on when you sleep. Please don't have that watch on. I was at a yoga conference just before my book was published. It was actually published on Amazon, and it was when it was published, it was actually #1 in all the health, fitness, and safety area for Amazon for new releases when it first came out. But I was at a health food yoga conference. We had a booth. We were announcing the release. And so I'm measuring, a guy had an Apple Watch, and normally I'll measure it every 6 to 30 seconds. There'll be a burst of radiation. So I'm measuring it, and it's all the time. It never goes down, thousands of times a safe level. I said, this is sort of odd. He said, well, I have it, and it's linked to my phone. And I looked, and he had his phone right in his pocket up here, right next to his heart. And I said, well, and obviously his phone was thousands of times the safe level, and it was constantly going off too. There wasn't any delay. It wasn't every 6 to 30 seconds. I said, here are the problems with this. He said, you know what? If I keep my watch on and I keep my phone on, every 3 months when I go into the doctor, I don't have to take a treadmill test. And because it sends the information to his heart wirelessly to a device that his doctor can read. And that's one of the worst things. Remember the doctors in the smock having it right here, and the arrhythmia that they were starting to have, heart issues. And, sometimes it's a good intention, but it's a bad result. And it was very, very high. So,
yeah. So we're coming to an end here, but I would love for you to talk a little bit about the 5G movement right now, how that it's affecting us. What do you see that we can do about it, the challenges that we see, just give the audience, because there's so much we can do that we can get involved, with, but the first thing is having the knowledge and why we're doing that.
Right, 5G is what they're doing is that they're actually putting up to 13 million antennas. We have maybe 300,000 now, and they're going to go up to, the highest number I've heard is 13 million in the US. And just to give you a perspective how big that number is, so in Wuhan in China, where the virus broke out, the coronavirus, the Chinese coronavirus, what happened was a friend of mine was over in China, and he was teaching English as a second language. And what happened was 2 months before that virus really got serious, they installed 10,000 5G antennas. Now, I'm not saying those 5G antennas caused the virus or any of this other things, but remember, when you have that much radiation, your immune system is starting to drop, and your body can't resist things as much. But there was at least 10,000 5G antennas installed there. So, but the 5G in the US, they have about 300,000 antennas. They're going to go up to as many as 13 million. And because they're pushing through so much more data, so with this 5G, they want to push so much more data, it can only go, it can't go as far as the 4G. So what they have to do now is they have to put up smaller antennas closer to your home. And what that means is that every 3 to 12 houses on a light post, you could have a cell phone antenna. Instead of a half a mile away, it can literally be right in front of your house. And in 2018, they actually relaxed the standards that they can actually get them up so much faster. And now the states don't like it in the cities and the counties, because now it's capped at about $270 a cell tower, and they used to get, anywhere from $3,000 a cell tower rental. And so they're fighting it. Most of them are fighting because of the monitoring, but just the distance of the cell tower, instead of a half a mile away, now it can be literally 30 feet away from your house. And instead of 300,000, now there can be up to 13 million. That's the latest numbers. And they have to put it so close to get the data. And they're using 3 different waves, 3 different frequencies. They're using a lower frequency that can go farther, less data, a mid frequency, and then they're using what's called millimeter wave. And that's the biggest one with the most radiation, and they can push the most data through it. And the problem is they've never done one safety study on 5G. They've never done any long-term studies, and they're pushing it out with any of those things. It's one of the worst things that they've ever done. And it's just, there's a Stop 5G, there's different Stop 5G groups out there. But the problem is the federal government in 1996, 97, when they passed the telecommunication law, there's a little provision in there. The provision says you can never deny a placement of a cell tower based on any health or environmental reasons. So you can never, well, what other reasons would you have it? Just aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
But for
it's
any
funny
health,
because you can quarantine everybody because of health issues.
right.
But you cannot stop a telecommunication tower because of health issues.
Right. And here's the other thing. When someone had cigarettes, and a lot of people smoked, I think the US I just heard was down to 15%. I think at the height it was 45 or 49%. You could say, hey, I'm not going to smoke. But you cannot opt out of that cell tower right in front of your house. And it's literally in the regulations. There's no way you can ever do it. And I'll read different studies where city council will say, hey, we're going to fight this. And then the attorney for the city will say, you got a problem. If that doesn't go in within 60 days or whatever that amount of time, then the federal government will start to sue and make you put it in no matter what. So again, that's part of the FCC, that's part of the regulations that they did. And what they're doing is, instead of connecting maybe 10 or 12 people, they connect over 100 people per tower. The density, they're a lot closer to you. Again, you just can't opt out. And they can use the millimeter wave. Some are using mid frequencies and lower frequencies, but they can use the millimeter wave, and nothing's ever been tested on that. No long-term studies on that. And it's just so much more radiation going through.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm sure the listeners will be thinking of solutions as well too. I mean, other than moving off of this planet at some point. So I'm sure you may have not got into this too much since 5G is relatively new, but even with the 4G and other signals, what are you seeing as far as a solution to protect, let's say, your house or your bedroom as like a shield from what's outside getting in?
Because we have heard about the paint, the draperies,
a window film.
Yeah, so shielding is always your last step. That's the last step, because some of the shielding is more permanent. And because it's reflective, what can happen is you can actually make it worse, because it might pick up another signal coming from another side and reflecting it back into your home. So you always need a meter to measure before and after. And I always recommend you use a temporary solution, even if you want to make it more permanent. So yeah, there's RF foiling. that comes out of Ontario, Canada that I use a lot. There's also draperies. There's all this fabric. So in the fabric, they have woven either carbon or a metal fixture. And then I was just at a house. There was a cell tower maybe 1,000 feet away. And so to test it, what we did is I carried the fabric with me. We put it along the wall that was facing the cell tower, and it was probably 15 or 17,000. And just that one little thing dropped it to like 1,200. So it was a huge drop, still not as low as we'd like to do it, but again, good, better, and best solution that you're dealing with. And then the more permanent is what you do is you actually have the paint. And you can paint inside or outside. They make different versions of it. And then if you do use the paint, you still have to do something with your windows. So you'd either use fabric on draperies or, like you mentioned, window film. So those are the three types. So you have the foil, you have the fabric, and then you have the paint that would be used with the window film. And then you also have to think about your roof. So you might do your walls, but is it coming from above? And so on your roof, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. One is putting the foil inside your attic. Another way is to actually, they have radiant barriers that you can spray on the inside of your attic that they do to stop the heat. And then you literally can take the tiles off your roof and put the foil on the roof and then put the tiles back. But we always recommend you do it in an incremental way. So you might do the fabric first just to see if you're going to get some benefits. We did it in less than 20 minutes. You can put it up and you take measurements before, measurements after. And then even if you're going to finally paint, let's say the outside of your house, what you want to do is just paint a section of it that looks like it's the worst and then measure it and then go a little bit farther, a little bit farther. So you always want to be very incremental, especially when something's permanent, like paint. It's very, very hard to get it off. And you can paint indoor, inside, or you can paint outside. There's also a sleeping canopy. So when someone's in a condominium, what do you do now? A person below me, a person above me, left, right, diagonally. And so they actually sell sleeping canopies that actually go over the bed, like a princess bed, like a mosquito net. And then you put a fabric underneath if you're on the second floor or higher, and then it touches that fabric, like a little fabric underneath. And then that'll cut it. For people who are in condos or apartments, that's normally the best thing because you really can't control your neighbors. And they're sharing walls and floors and ceilings with you. So the canopies is a very good way. And then there's one person who's actually making more like a little sleeping bag, a little permanent one. So people who travel, they can actually take it to their hotel room, just sort of slip into that and slip into that. So there's actually portable ones as well that they're just coming out with. And there's also clothing, but I always caution people on clothing, unless you're really hypersensitive. Sometimes the clothing, sort of like the case around your phone, you might be doing something where you think you're protecting, but if you're not hypersensitive, you might not feel the effects, where you might have the clothing up to here, but how about your neck and other things? And it might hit the clothing and actually wrap around and make your neck even worse. So people who are very hypersensitive can actually feel the difference. So there's a sensitivity. People who are way over here, they're more sensitive, and then the people who are less sensitive, we're sort of in the middle, but if they're very, very sensitive, then they could tell if the clothing's helping them or not, if you fall into that category. But you do have to watch out for the clothing. So again, it's not my first choice, but if that's your only choice, then yes, use it.
Perfect. Well, as once again, thank you, Bill. This is our second interview with you, and for the listeners too, Bill's been helping us as well in our own home, so I can't thank you enough. It's such a pleasure to have you here. We've opened a Pandora's box. Hopefully this information has served you guys listening. We highly encourage you guys. Would you like to tell them about a perfect opportunity to take advantage of Bill's offer here?
Yeah. So Bill has two offers. One of them is a 15-minute consultation call. It's a free consultation, and the link is going to be down below this video. And the other one is 10 ways you can reduce radiation exposure now. Is that downloadable file that you can look at things you can do to, you know, as this says, to reduce your exposure. So I would definitely take him up on that offer and give him a 15-minute call if you have any questions. And again, just start doing something. Just turning off your cell phone, moving your cell phone out of your bedroom, putting in airplane mode as much as possible. Take it, you know, keep it away from your body. Use some kind of, we use air tubes. Air tubes, is that right? Air tubes. Not convenient because of the cables, but hey, if I need to talk to somebody, I don't need to put that into my face. So thank you so much for being here today, Bill, and for your offer.
Great. Thanks again for having me and getting this most important message out to people. And I did want to mention that on your Facebook page is you actually have a PowerPoint that I normally give when I go out to speak, and it's in two parts. One, the issues, and then the second part. So if someone wants to see that, it's out on your Facebook page. Please go out there. If they will, again, we have people who will watch a 1-minute video and people won't watch something more, but if you want to dig deeper into that, then that's a great two videos to watch, and I go through a PowerPoint on that for more detail and solutions as well. We're always concentrating on the solutions.
Yeah, it's very informative too, like very easy to digest, very easy to understand. And yeah, I highly suggest it's still in the group, so you can watch it.
Great. Thanks again for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.